Hello students, we shall start the chapter electricity now. Electricity are basically of two kinds, static electricity and dynamic electricity or current electricity. Here I shall discuss the basics of static electricity. To understand static electricity, let us take an example of a common situation. If a person is wearing a hat for a considerable amount of time. So, if a person is wearing a hat, a very funny diagram, right? If a person is wearing a hat for a considerable amount of time, and for example, let's say after 3 hours, he gets rid of the hat, what happens to his hair? His hair stands on its own, on its end, right? Like this, isn't it? Now the question is, why does that happen? Two things are happening. The hairs are standing on their ends and they are getting separated from each other also. Can you see the distance here? They are getting separated from each other. And they are obviously standing on their ends. The answer to this is static electricity. Alright, I'll come to the solution later to this particular situation. What is static electricity is that, you see, the matters, if you have learned in class 9 chemistry, are composed of electrons and protons, right? So let's take two objects here. This is one object and this is the other object, alright? So now the electrons are here also and electrons are here also. The protons are inside the nucleus, as you have learned, and electrons are here also. Now it's all about concentration. Here the concentration of electrons is high. There are more electrons here, and here the concentration of electrons is low, right? Whenever there is a friction between them, friction, they touch each other. So if there is friction between these two objects, what will happen to electrons? The electrons will flow from high concentration to the low concentration, right? That means the electrons will flow from A to B immediately. Alright, so now if that happens, now next situation, this object A, it has lost electrons, isn't it? It has lost electrons. So if it has lost electrons, it has become positive. Class 9 chemistry, alright. Now this object B has gained electrons, isn't it? So object B has gained electrons. So if it has gained electrons, this has become negative. So object A is positive and object B is now negative. Now, I am taking two examples only. In your surrounding, everything is colliding with everything else. That means the objects are continuously becoming positive and negative. This A will, for example, collide with another object C, and hence, let's say C has a higher or lower concentration depending on the nature of the C, and hence A may become negative again. Similarly, B also will collide with someone else and become positive again. So everything in the universe is colliding with everything else and hence becoming positive and negative continuously. It's a continuous process, isn't it? That is static electricity. That means the flow of electrons. Now, if you have understood this concept, what is happening to your hair after wearing the hat for 3 hours? Right? What is happening is this. When you are wearing the hat for 3 hours, the electrons are getting transferred to your hair. The hairs are getting negatively charged. Very interesting. Your hairs are now negatively charged. Next point. And that is why, because they are negatively charged, they are standing on their ends. Next point. Why they are separate from each other? Because all of them are negatively charged. And we know that similar charges repel each other. Because similar charges repel each other, the hairs repel each other, and that is why there is a gap between them. Right? I think you have understood that part. Alright, there is one more point over here. Let me explain this part. So whenever electrons flows from high concentration to low concentration, the flow of electrons, this is called discharging. Right? Discharging. Try to understand something over here. There is no pathway here. we have not provided any pathway. The electron get transferred from this object to this object whenever they touch each other. There is no definite pathway. Okay. Now, this rate of discharging is very low, so we don't feel the effect. But if the rate of discharging is very fast, very high, we are going to feel the effect. This is exactly what happens in terms of clouds. So when in the sky, when the clouds are formed like this, in due course of time, they collide, right? So there is a collision. So some clouds become positive, some clouds become negative. So this kind of situation basically happens. Something is positive and something is negative. Alright. So let's say this has higher concentration, this has higher concentration, and this has, let's say, low concentration. So what is going to happen now? There is going to be discharge, right? And when this discharge happens, because the discharge happens in a huge number of electrons, it is going to produce some form of energy, and that is nothing but the lightning. Right? There is a discharge from this end, this cloud to this cloud, and this is discharging. But have I provided the pathway? No, right? There is no definite pathway over here. It is just electrons are flowing from high concentration to low concentration with a huge number, and that is why the discharging process is creating a huge amount of energy, and that energy can be seen in terms of lightning. Right? So this is all about static electricity. In the next class, we are going to learn the basics of current electricity.